Hi, I'm Tim, welcome to the Restoration Couple. Today's video is all about this old rustic shelf which we built for the office. It's from an old scaffold board, but it needed a bit of work to get it to tie in with everything else up here. So stick around and I'll show you how we did it. The first thing I've done with this one is to remove the nail bars. I'm not even sure what these are for, maybe just to stop the ends checking and splitting too much. One thing's for certain, if you value your hand tools, your planer knives or your thicknesser knives, then perhaps don't go for these reclaim ones, because if you think about the years and years of builders and brickies walking over these, there's bound to be sand and all sorts ingrained deep into this, and that's just asking to blunt whatever you're going to use on it. So it's best practice, really, I'd say, is to use sanders and hand scrapers and things to do this, rather than any fine finishing tools. And really, you're not going to buy a scaffold board and plane it down to some silky smooth veneer anyway. As you might be able to make out, these are a little bit narrow. They're designed for a slightly narrower board, so I'm going to have to take about 20mm off the back edge of our shelf, and hopefully there's not too much grit or metal or anything in there to nick our blade, but we'll clean that off and that'll leave us with the old weathered front for the front of our shelf. Now, it's not a full-length board because last year when we did the fish tank project, we used a section of this board for the lid for that, and I'll put a link to that video at the end. So while some people might just leave it as it is, just give it a kind of a sweep off and wax it, it needs a little bit more finesse than that. I'm going to be using it in the office, but there's still likelihood that just dust and fluff will just cling to it if you leave it rough sawn like that. So I'm just going to knock it back a little bit, use the belt sander to take the edge off, and then perhaps use the wire brush. We'll have a little play around. Now, dust extraction is one thing that we seriously lack, and even, I mean, the table saw design is absolutely terrible for dust extraction. It just does nothing. In terms of the most of the chips on certainly here end up being flung upwards, and the dust especially, and there's no kind of collection hood above the saw blade, and that one that is below it doesn't really do much good. What it does work very well is on this sander here. I used it last week, and 99% of stuff ends up being taken away to the cyclone really well. I make pretty light work of that. If you have a look at this board, we're actually pretty clean and smooth on the top, and we left the deep parts of the grain in place, which is nice because that's what gives it the character, but there's still quite a lot of grime and grub in there which we kind of want to get out. So I'm going to use a wire brush just to clear that out, and then we'll get on to weathering this to a point where it will match in with a little bit more of the timber that's up in the loft. Just by wire brushing sections like that, you take out the softer wood and it leaves the harder grain, the kind of heartwood and sapwood from over the years, behave differently. So you end up with that raised grain, which is a bit more like driftwoody, or that sort of look. Anyway, that's where we're going to leave it with that. Next up, I'm going to give it a clean, and I'm going to give it another sand because I've raised a load of grain and fluff from the board with the wire brush. So we'll just flatten that back off and then I'll probably just give it a knockback with some 120 by hand. Then we'll get on to the fun bit. Good. So that's probably enough. I've left enough of the battle scars in from its life as a working scaffold plank to now being somewhere that's reasonably clean but got enough texture and rusticness. If you watch the loft conversion series, we went pretty white and bright up there, but we kept in a few of the timbers, and it's those timbers which I want to try and match with this. And while they are softwood pine like this, they are so old that they've darkened over the years, and the sort of rough sawn look of them has just aged, and it's gone this kind of dark, warm brown colour, and that's what we need to try and get from this. Now, of course, I could use stains and things like that to get on here, but then it's hit and miss whether you're going to get it bang on. You've got to do all the swatches and things like that. Plus, at the end of the day, it's less fun than what we're going to do. I think if we burn it, then we're going to get a bit more of a natural look to it. We can sand it back then until we're happy. We're not going to go for a full-on charcoal effect here. We're just going to kind of colour it basically, and then knock it back until we're happy, and then by the time we wax it, should be somewhere close. Just give the front edge, which is the bit you'll see the most actually, a bit of a toasting. Kind of takes me back to the days of doing creme brulees for 10 years as a chef. Right, we'll call it a day there. Luckily we haven't got a smoke alarm fitted yet. So you can see it's a little bit blotchy and it's gone rather zebra-like, and that's not the look we want to go for. Some people might leave it like that, but what I'm going to do now is sand it back, and that sounds a little stupid, but actually it kind of blends it in a bit more. You can see how the different types of grain, a bit like when we were wire brushing it, how that's behaved differently on the torch. Some of it's burnt away, some of it hasn't. And that's what we kind of want to get rid of. So I'd say we're getting there. It's not far off where we need to get, and I think just by oiling it we'll bring out the warmth a little bit more. There are other ways you can go about aging wood if you want the darker look. You can use acids, or some people put steel wool in vinegar and then put that on, and it kind of just affects the tannins in the wood. Being that this is so dry, not sure if that would work the same or not. But you know, there's lots of ways of doing this. And like I said, you could just stain it. I think this end, probably a bit of a fail. Bit blotchy, it's going to be okay, but you know, it's not as even as it should be. This end, I really went to town on the torch and blackened this whole area completely. Then I sanded it back, and that is much closer to what I wanted. The thing is, I'm going to get through 2 of those cans if I go that far. So I'm just not going to do that. If you're going to do this on a larger scale, like fencing or a gazebo or something like that, or cladding for a building, then you just bang a roofing propane torch on a full-on cylinder, and it will be done in seconds. So this is purely experimental, but you've got to start somewhere. Right, now we need to think about how we're going to finish it. I'm just using you're trying to use up what I've got here. Usually I just use wax on everything, but I don't actually have any at the moment. I've got some kind of liquid brush-on wax polish, but it's not actually that great. So I've got oil options. I've got old school Grandpa's linseed oil out of Grandpa's shed. Of course we've got lacquers and varnishes and Osmo, but they all take far too long, and this is a 1 hour project. Well, one thing I guess you could use, show me on the offcuts, but knotting. Let's have, oh, we have got an offcut. I think I'm right in saying knotting is shellac. Right, here's our offcut from the table saw, which has not even been sanded. It darkens it up a bit. Maybe we experiment with that. If it's shellac, then surely it can be used like shellac. I reckon let's have a little go with the knotting as an experiment first. We'll go on the top of the shelf because it's going to be quite high up. Don't think we'll see that, so we'll give this another vacuum off quickly. It's just that bit there. I mean, it's darkened it down. It's perhaps brought out the black of the burning more, so it's actually going to emphasise the blotching, but we'll leave it, see if it dries much more than that. I've done a few bits of playing around. I'm actually going to go ahead and use knotting solution. At the end of the day, it's shellac base, so it's kind of a finish, and we can just put wax and polishes on top of it. Of course, if you're a vegan, I think it's like crushed beetle wings or something, isn't it? Shellac. Might be wrong there, actually. Right, let's not be precious about it. Let's just bung it on. Okay, so it's definitely made our burnt bits more burnt, but that's alright. And remember, the beauty is we could always sand it off. It's not the end of the world. No one's getting hurt, apart from the beetles, I guess. I mean, there's nothing to say that this won't lighten back up again, and then we'll be back where we started, but I'm pretty sure it stays quite dark from when I've primed up wood. While I pop this to one side just to give it 5 minutes, it's going to dry super quick. Let's talk about these brackets. Now, these brackets I mentioned in a previous video and said it was so simple that it inspired me to start welding this year. And I hadn't expected that challenge to come quite so swiftly, because that was the same very night. A chap called David, a subscriber, a viewer who'd seen that video, said, "Hey, I've got this welder, it's still in the box," and he didn't need it, or he didn't want it. Sure enough, a couple of days later, I kind of paid for a courier to collect it, and here it is. So it is an entry-level machine, I'm sure, and it's a gasless welder, which is all I really need to start with anyway. If I really get into it, then we can go all guns blazing. But from all reports, it's going to do the job just fine for the sort of thing I need, which is making table legs and welding brackets and things like that. It's got one smallish coil of flux core wire in it. You know, usual stuff. I haven't used it yet. I've set it up as per instructions. Bought myself some gear, and I can't wait to get started on this. So we will no longer have to be buying cheap Chinese tat off Amazon, and we can all that scrap steel that I've been stashing out the back, we can put to good use. I'm really excited about that. It also means that if you've got garden machinery or garden tools that break and snap, which happens a lot, then we don't have to ditch them. We can actually do something about it. But once again, thank you, David, for your very kind gift. I'll need to practice that. Right, come on. This is a 1 hour project, guys. Let's get back on track. I think I do want something on there. Let's go with the wipe-on wax polish. It's the sort of thing you just kind of tart up your handrails with, but it'll be enough for now. I've got so many bottles like this size of just stuff. You buy it and you use this much of it and it sits there. And I know it won't go out of date, but it's good to use what you've got. Right, we'll do a little tester. Thank you, Nanny. Old tea towel she gave me. Yeah, that looks good enough. I told you this is going to be a speedy, rustic project. Right, let's go and hang it up. I'm thinking this sort of height here. As we're above my printer, we better put a little dust catcher on the wall. So what I was going to do is just pack a couple of washers behind here to make sure it was brought out enough. But because you can't see down the side, the plug is actually protruding by about 4mm, and that's going to hold it off enough. I'm going to use my screws, and then we can always paint them black. The ones that came with the brackets were terrible. Unfortunately, we've hit a mortar gap on that side. Should be okay. The top one's in the stone, but it's just rough coursing like this, you just can't guess. And because I really want the brackets to be in the same amount on each side, can't really avoid it. I mean, you're not going to hang off it, but it's not going anywhere. Now, I said I'd paint those screws black, but I'm going to be pure lazy. Just use a Sharpie on the heads. Now, as we're impatient, we'll give it a final wipe off to make sure there's no polish left on it. And then we can throw some stuff on it and call it a job done. So that's pretty much it. It's up there. It's kind of a bit of a graveyard for old cameras and lenses and backup bits and bobs. Everything looks better with some houseplants. Not the most technical of builds, but a little bit of fun and something a little bit different. There's loads more to do up here in the office, new desk to build and some kind of new doors and storage to do. So there'll be a little bit more coming from up here, but if you haven't checked out the full playlist from probably 18 months ago, 2 years ago, when we did the loft conversion, I'll stick that at the end. But that's it. Any questions, stick them down below. Make sure you subscribe for more videos like this and bigger projects along the way. And of course, if you've got any comments on this one, especially on the use of knotting as a finish, it seemed to work for us, then I'd like to hear what you think. But thanks for watching. Remember, if you can, do it yourself, and we'll see you next time.